Hey there, Colonials. Welcome back to Quickly Colonial. And today we have a special bit to talk about, and that is marbles in colonial America. But before we dive in, I just want to do a shout out and say thank you to you viewers and all of our friends of Quickly Colonial. You guys give me the opportunity to share these wonderful stories and this wonderful history with you. And as I was going through and uploading some videos and checking over some things this week, I noticed a comment from a past video that we had where there was a question. And how did I know something that I put in this video? And I want to share with you guys that I want to bring you the most factual information that I can. And so a lot of these videos, I spend hours, if not days, tracking information down. We've gone on site to places, and I've visited with local historians. I've visited with museum curators. We just did a few videos in some of our visits down to Fort Pitt and some of our videos to Fort LeBoeuf, where I've literally sat and talked with the people that run those museums. And I've gone to libraries and local historical societies and cemeteries to try to track down as much factual information as I possibly can to share with you. And so I just want to let you guys know that I am so very thankful for the views and the likes and the subscriptions. And if you like what you see, please give me a like and subscribe, and we'll be able to bring more information and more fun and more colonial trivia to you. So with that, let's dive right in. When I was a kid, oh boy, I'm showing my age here, but this, I would say from probably 10 years old and younger, this was one of my most favorite games as a kid. And our neighborhood that we lived in when I was really small, there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood. And I remember that was right around the time where a lot of the rich folks were starting to buy ice cream in the big plastic gallon tubs, where the rest of us, we still had those cardboard half gallons that pried open, and they were a mess. They leaked. If you let them sit out too long, they leaked everywhere. But I remember those rich kids, they had those big gallon tubs, and back then, whenever we would play marbles, we played on the sidewalk or in somebody's backyard or something like that. And I remember kids taking a shoestring out of their shoes and making the circle. Or if we were at somebody's house, we would use Scotch tape and we'd make a circle on the carpeting. Or I even remember being in people's backyards and there was dry dirt, and we'd trace a circle with our finger. And that was our circle for the boundary line. There have been so many versions through history. We're talking thousands of years. They have found some form of marbles in Egyptian tombs. They have found them in Babylonian dig sites. They have found them in ancient Chinese, ancient Japanese. They found them in South America. Native Americans, they have found them all across the world. Some form of a game where you use a small little stone ball or clay ball or glass ball. And so there are so many variations of the game. During this time, during colonial times that we're talking about, I have to refer to my notes here because there was so much information. During these colonial times, most of the finds, so like if you go to any of the historical museums across America from the colonial time period, most of the marbles that are found are going to be made out of clay. As I said just a few seconds ago, for thousands of years, they would make them out of baked clay or stone, something like that. In the American colonies, though, they weren't manufactured until the 1600s, and at that point they were made out of stone. Then by the 1700s, they were replaced by, I'm sure you've seen, like, you go into an antique shop or a museum, you'll see those big earthen crocks, and they might be like that dark brown stripe at the top, and the lower part is almost like a cream color, and it was for food storage. And sometimes there'll be a number on it for the size. They would take leftover remnants of that clay and roll it into little balls and bake them just like they would that earthenware, and it was a children's game. They would make the marbles out of that. Glass marbles were around, starting right around in the 1700s in our like American Revolution time period, and previous, like we're talking maybe the 1750s, 1740s, where these glass marbles they had started to be made. However, they were very, very rare. They were very expensive to make, and they were predominantly for the rich folks. And so in most of the dig sites, in most of the archaeological finds that they have found in colonial America, and especially in the South and things like that, they will probably predominantly be either the stone ones, the clay ones, or the ceramic ones made out of the earthenware. Here's the thing, though: culture has a lot to do with this, and so there are more marbles found in the southern states, in those archaeological sites, especially like in Virginia and North and South Carolina, those areas. There's a lot more marbles found because of the culture shock. There was a vast difference between the folks that lived in Virginia and the folks that lived in New York or New Jersey or Pennsylvania or Delaware. They were from different areas. That their ancestors came from different parts of the world, and so whether there were rules or laws or religious beliefs or something like that, they were vastly different. In New York, there was actually a law in New York in 1679 that you couldn't play this game. Pennsylvania had it in 1705. And it seems like that latter part of the 1600s going into the early 1700s, these rules were really strict, and they were really pounced on. And then we kind of see them taper off, because we have these areas in New York and in Pennsylvania where the law says you're not allowed to do this, but archaeological finds have proven otherwise. So that's the typical American way. You have a British law, and British laws are meant to be broken by the colonial Americans. Like, you're going to tell me I'm not allowed to do something? I'm going to do it 10 times harder. So that makes sense in our time period here. So they're found in lower quantities in English 17th century dig sites because of these laws and these cultures, rather than the Dutch or French sites. You'll find them a lot more in those areas. There was a list of laws, or like the law book, the rule book. It was called The Laws Divine, Moral, and Martial. And this was a law book that was composed somewhere like the 1610 to 1612 time period. And there was a quote there. One of the laws says, individuals were not to use any unlawful and prohibited games. And then it had a list of examples for these games, and marbles were one of those games. You weren't allowed to play them in graveyards, but children would find that, I don't know, for whatever reason, it might have been the material that they were making, but there was like a thin layer of sand on some of these tombstones, or the big tombs that were above ground, and that was the perfect spot to play these games. And so in graveyards, in these colonial dig sites, they've been finding marbles. In New York, now we're talking American Revolution time period, the 1750s, 1760s, with all the British tax and like the Stamp Act and Intolerable Acts and all of those. Now we're getting into our time period, and so we see those basic laws, like these. Oh, you're not allowed to play marbles. They're really not pouncing on those rules that much, whereas we're getting into the big hardcore stuff with the American Revolution at this point. So let that other stuff go back on the back burner. And so in New York, they softened the law. You weren't allowed to play marbles on Sundays. And so, and this goes for several European towns and all the way back to the 1500s. So no marbles in church or in church grounds in the 1500s. Now, this goes for Europe, this goes for the American colonies, all of this. You weren't allowed to play marbles in schools. And this is crazy to think about. Even in our own town, we have these old, ridiculous laws that are still on the law books. Like our main street here, we're not allowed to tie our horse in front of the courthouse on Sundays. And I can tell you, in my lifetime, at least since we've lived here, I have not seen anybody ride a horse down Main Street any day of the week, let alone on Sundays. So we have these ridiculous laws that are still on the books. The reason that I bring that up is that these marble laws in the American South, there are a couple towns and a couple cities down south in American states today, in the 21st century, you're still not allowed to play marbles. So absolutely crazy to think about. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention my hero, George Washington, and in Mount Vernon. And if you go to the Mount Vernon museum there, I don't know if they have changed things in the last 6 months. We were just there a couple months ago, and it wasn't finished yet. There was still parts that they were changing over. So I don't know if they're still on display, but I know that a couple years ago that they had marbles that they had found on dig sites at Mount Vernon. And just to put this in a clearer picture here, in 1799, the year that George Washington died, there were 28 children, whether they were free, that they were custis children and things like that, and grandchildren, or enslaved children, under the age of 14. And so you see all those kids, somebody, we don't know who owned these marbles, but somebody had these marbles at Mount Vernon because they've been found on the dig sites there. And Revolutionary War camps, the soldiers, some of them carried actual marbles, whether they be the clay ones or the stone ones or the ceramic ones or the glass ones. But in some of the Revolutionary soldiers' diaries, they have even said that, hey, yeah, like we got really bored and we played marbles with musket balls. And so they're still playing those games, and they did the best that they could. If all they had was musket balls to play, then that's what they used. So, but my dear Colonials, there you have it. There's a game. My family, we've given marbles to our children, especially at Christmas time. And I was just at the store today, and there's still marbles on the shelf. So there you go, marbles in colonial America, and we still have them today. Just another wonderful connection to our dear colonial times, and we're still doing it. My dear Colonials, thank you. If you give it a few seconds, give me a like and subscribe. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.